So, the second topic of chapter 3, Karma Yoga. I told you this chapter is where the sermon, the knowledge which is directly applicable to Arjuna and therefore all of us really begins. It's taken us the third chapter to begin the actual study which is relevant to us. How can we apply this in our day-to-day life? So, verses 4 to 19 of this chapter talk about an intellectual appeal for action. Why do you need to act? First, you have to understand the reasons why it is so important to act in this world and how to act. So, in the fourth verse, he makes it very clear. Not by abstaining from action does man attain perfection, nor by mere renunciation does he attain perfection. So, what is implied is neither should you stop doing what you're doing necessarily, nor do you have to worry about not taking up anything new. In other words, just by staying away from action, you will not get anywhere. You have to act. So he immediately lays down the marker. Action is essential. So any thoughts of not acting is not going to help you spiritually. And in the fifth verse, he gives the reason, which I started explaining last time. Nobody can remain inactive shanamapi. Shanam means even for a moment. You're forced to act because you have these vasanas, these tendencies, nature within, which manifests as thoughts and desires. So you have to act. There's no choice. The only thing you can do is choose the type of action. That's why he brings in the qualities here. Tamas is ignorance, inertia. Rajas is that obsession, craving, anxiety, stress, and that makes you act. And sattva, the highest quality, is your mind is peaceful, intellect is alert, and yet the body is in action. That's the highest stage. So we have to aspire for that stage. But you have to act. There's no choice about that. So this is the law, right? See, your muscles maintain their strength only if they're used. Suppose you get a fracture on your elbow and the whole thing is in a cast. After a couple of months, they open the cast. What do you see? You see the muscles atrophied. Then you have to do physical therapy to get them back to their strength. They were not used. So, action is inevitable. It's the insignia of life. So, before we continue, I think a couple of questions came in, which you requested to be taken up. Can we put those?
Question. From the first 5 verses of chapter 3, is it the right understanding that there is a dynamic cycle between action and knowledge?
Yes, there is a dynamic cycle between action and knowledge in as much as without the right knowledge, you cannot perform the right action. In fact, in Vedanta, there's actually no difference because as you understand the urgency of acting and how to act properly, obviously you will act properly, right? If you really understand that you put your finger in the fire, it will burn. Will you put your finger in the fire? If you understood, the action is automatic. So if you're not acting, obviously you're not understood. That is why we go on emphasizing the importance of keeping in touch, gaining the knowledge every morning, right? First thing in the morning, you have to do it. You have to exercise your intellect. And then as the intellect grows, the action will be automatic. And as you act properly, you remove these lower desires and attachments. So your ability to gain more knowledge is enhanced. So it's a cycle. You gain the knowledge, you act upon it, and that helps you gain more knowledge. So that's how you grow. So you're right. You use that word, whoever it is, dynamic cycle. It is a dynamic cycle. But knowledge is what spearheads the whole thing. I told you yesterday, when you understand, it's called Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. And when you purely feel for that which you understand, that's called devotion, bhakti. People believe devotion is just blind faith. It's not. You understand with your intellect that the self is the highest. That is what is to be attained in this lifetime. Automatically you will feel for it. That is devotion. And when you understand and feel, you will act to reach that goal. That is karma, the path of action, selfless action, which he's going to talk about in this whole chapter. So the whole thing is spearheaded, propelled by the right knowledge. There's no other way. See, the moth doesn't understand if it goes near the fire, it will get burnt. It only feels. It feels attracted to the fire. So the only force that can guide your feelings is understanding, intellect. Animals don't have that. A fish doesn't understand that the worm is actually camouflaging the hunter's, the fisherman's hook, goes and eats it. It doesn't understand. So feeling can only be guided by the right knowledge. Remember that. And that guides the right actions. It's as simple as that. So since there's no knowledge, how does everybody act today in the world? Pure emotion. I hate you, you hate me. Anger, hatred, fear, jealousy, fanaticism. These are all feelings. Racism, prejudice, otherness, all feelings which everybody acts on. Even the most educated people have no intellect. They're just intelligent, but they all act on pure feelings. Right.
Question 2. Is a good way to understand sattva like a balance of tamas and rajas? We all have a little rajas and tamasic nature depending on the day. Is the nature of sattva more like finding and maintaining a controlled balance between the two extremes?
Simple answer is no. Sattva is not a balance of rajas and tamas. To the extent you are not rajasic and tamasic, you are sattvic. Sattva is the opposite of rajas and tamas. So, if you are 20% tamasic, 50% rajasic, that's your nature, that's 70. That means you're 30% sattvic. So, it is a complement and a supplement. To the extent you're not rajasic and tamasic, you're sattvic. So, time of the day is only which quality in you surfaces the strongest. That is true. So, whatever sattva you have, even if it's 5% or 50%, that surfaces most powerfully in the early hours of the morning, between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. Don't ask how, what. This is how nature functions. And they gave a time to that time. It's called Brahma Muhurta, the time of God. In fact, it's given that nomenclature in the scriptures. And I've told you practically, let's say 5 to 6. 4 is very, very early for most of you since you're working all day. So I would say 5, but not later than that. To the tamasic people, I would say 5:30. Then you say not even 5:30, then you wait for next life. Now what can I do? What about 5:45? I'll bargain. Okay, you bargain, but you're bargaining with yourself. So, and then after 6 a.m., you will find a distinct shift to Rajas. Everybody wants to act. Okay, what are we doing today? What is my work? I have to exercise. I have to go to the gym. I have to go to the office, whatever. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. You will find yourself prone to action. That's the Rajasic time. Tamasic time starts 6 p.m. onwards. What do you want to do after that? Where's my drink? Where's my chips? Where's the TV? This is tamas. You want to indulge. Even a drunkard, you ask him to drink early in the morning, he'll say no. Evening will start. Even a gambler, you say early in the morning, let's go to the casino. No. Let's go in the evening. It's the natural cycle. So you have to use that cycle to your advantage. So that is why a spiritual discipline is to sleep early and wake up early. It's not known anywhere. Forget about practiced. The other day I met somebody, American, in the sense he doesn't know anything about Vedanta, and he was telling me, I stumbled upon this, and I wake up every morning at 5, and the work that I get done in that 1 hour is better than the 3 hours in the night that I used to do it earlier. I explained to him this. He was shocked. He said, they knew this thousands of years ago. I said, yes. A doctor, right? Amazing fellow. He says, I do that. I was telling him. So, helplessly you have to act. That's what he says in the 5th verse. So, all clear so far? Verse 6. कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारः स उच्यते कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारः स उच्यते. He who, restraining the organs of action, karmendriyani sanyamya, sits mentally indulging in the sense objects. He of deluded understanding, vimudhatma, completely stupid understanding, deluded, is nothing but a mithyachara, hypocrite. So, this in short is today's so-called organized religious practices, right? They'll stay away from the world, from materiality, sensuality, but inside all the thoughts are going towards that. Gita says this is nothing but hypocrisy. So, it's not going to work. See, you understand the trend, what he's talking about. You have to act with knowledge. You can't not act. So he's continuing here. If you just stop yourself from acting without gaining knowledge of the higher, your mind will still go to the lower. You're nothing but a hypocrite. Might as well act and get what you want. So, this is the misunderstanding in spiritual growth. And these are the hypocrites, which are the real destroyers of spirituality in the world. Every time you'll find some case, some fraud, some abuse, the so-called spiritual people or leaders and all. This is the reason. They make a show of renunciation. But inside they value the world more than the followers. This is the problem. Followers are sincere. And they do it for what? Nothing but name and fame and money. What else is it? So what you must understand is, then what is spiritual development? As you appreciate the higher through knowledge, automatically you lose your value for the lower. See, as a child, you are attached to toys, right? Remember this child and adult example always. A child is attached to toys because it doesn't understand anything better. But an adult is not attached to toys because an adult understands what is relatively higher. The adult world, name and fame and money and family, much more than the toys, worth much more. So you have no value for toys. This is how you grow spiritually. Right now you're stuck in your attachments. Just gain knowledge of the self. This glorious wisdom of Vedanta teaches you what life is all about. And as you appreciate these higher values, as you experience that higher satisfaction and purpose in life, automatically you lose the value for the low. So no master should tell you to give up anything. You cannot. A true master will only say gain the knowledge, understand. And automatically you'll elevate yourself. So right now you just don't understand that you have given up your real self for nothing, for this world. You've renounced what you're really worth. Judas sold Christ for 30 pieces of silver, right? That's what it's symbolic of. You have sold yourself within for these small, small things, gold and silver of the world. So you just don't understand what you're worth. It's like a billionaire going and begging in the streets. No, he lost his memory in an accident, and he was in a foreign country. Nobody knew him, and he lost his money. He lost his memory in an accident, and he got robbed or whatever, and he doesn't know. So he's begging in the streets. Now, what will you tell such a person? That's what we are. That's how you got to picture yourself. Why am I a beggar? Why do I demand from people and things outside when the kingdom of heaven is within me, the self? So hypocrisy is nothing but ignorance. So don't get taken away by outward show of renunciation. You must assess the knowledge of the person. Is it helping you? That's the only thing you have to assess. That is the only thing relevant to you. Is the knowledge this person is giving going to help me grow? That's your relationship. So very powerful words he uses here. Mudha means fool. Vimudhatma means colossal fool. PhD in foolishness. That's what PhD means, some of you have PhD, I know. They put their name, doctor, this, doctor. Philosophical dunce. PhD. Correct, no? Philosophically deluded. Anything you want to put, you put. Yes, Vikram.
Gautamji, there are two questions. The first one is from Pratt. I have an impulse to act. How do I control it? I almost feel like acting first and learning through it.
You almost feel like acting first and learning through it. Yeah, why don't you do drugs and then learn what drugs does to you? I feel like acting first and learning from it. That's not how you learn. There's a saying, fools learn from their own experiences, the wise through others. Wisdom is you learn from the experiences of those who have gone through the situation before you. So you don't have to learn through experience. That's what I just gave the example of drugs. You don't have to take a opioid to understand what opioid addiction will do to you. It will destroy you. So it's like that. Or heroin. You understand others who've done it. There's an analysis. What has happened to them? So you avoid that situation. So Vedanta is nothing but the digest of the experiences of a galaxy of sages and saints who went through the mistakes and learned from it and taught us. Not one person, not two, galaxy. So what is your problem? Just learn. Yes. Next one.
The next question is from Sandra. What is satsang, and can the mind become sattvic in the company of master, irrespective of the time of the day, like early morning or late night, etc.?
Sat means truth, sang means company. Sat sang means company of the truth. It refers to a conducive environment for your spiritual growth. So since the mind is weak, if it will be placed in a conducive environment for materiality, sensuality, it will succumb. So you have to take it away from that environment into an environment which is conducive for higher thinking. Because the mind functions, all of you would know this intuitively, but you must understand the mind functions on the principle of thought association. So if you have a weakness for alcohol, you will go into a bar, automatically that thought will come because it's conducive, thought association. But if you are in a temple, even if you are a drinker, chances are the thought of drinking won't come there. Whatever divine feelings you have will come out there. It's like that. So that's why I told you, you must get up early in the morning because that is conducive environment. Use that. But just by being in a conducive environment, it won't help you. You have to make your effort in that environment. By being near a master per se, nothing's going to happen. You have to use that wisdom and apply it. It's like asking, if I'm near a millionaire, will I become a millionaire? Whole day I'm hanging around a millionaire. Nothing will happen. You have to learn from that person how to make money and go and make it. So this is what people believe. Let me just hang around the guru. He won't bring you up. Chances are you'll bring him down. You understand? Because there's no chance for you to grow, but chances are that poor fellow will come down. Right? So Don't unnecessarily hang around. So that is why I minimize my time with all of you. Minimalistic. Because I know there's no chance bringing you up, but there is a chance I might drop down. So, got to protect, no? Just by hanging around a guru, that doesn't mean anything. Of course, it is helpful. You're gaining the knowledge, but it's your effort. It only makes it conducive. So, guru is like a signpost. Remember that. A signpost tells you where to go, but you can't hang around the signpost. You have to go. Gives you without the signpost, you can't go because you don't know where to go. But you have to go. So, guru is given the highest place in Vedanta because without that, there's no chance. But just by that, also, there's not going to help. It's a means to an end. So, definitely, you should associate with like-minded people, with teachers who are knowledgeable. The time of the day, all that is very important, but it's your self-effort. And if you want more proof, Krishna in the middle of the battlefield, Krishna is an enlightened soul. Arjuna is not just his student, he is his cousin, friend, everything put together. So there can't be any two people closer than Krishna and Arjuna. And what does he tell him? Uddharet atmanatmanam atmanam avasadayet. You have to raise yourself by yourself. Atmaiva yatmano bandhu. You yourself are your friend. Atmaiva ripuratmana. You yourself are your own enemy. In other words, I can't do anything. You have to. I can give you guidance. So don't deflect your responsibility to others. By His grace, I will. You need the grace. Grace is always there. How much are you taking is up to you. Vasu.
Gautamji, so verse 3-5, you said that no one can remain inactive even for a minute, right? So you also mentioned the concept of intellectual alertness, right? So that means throughout the day you should be intellectually alert. So how do you use this concept to look for pockets of inactivity, and how do you counter it in a practical sense?
Pockets of inactivity, the easiest way to do that is to set a routine for yourself. And then when you're not doing it, this is inactivity. Let's say you have set a routine for yourself that every morning I have to exercise for an hour. And before that exercise time starts, you start thinking of excuses. Coffee I have not had, no, so far. Today I have to clean up my drawer. Some nonsense. See, this is how you immediately will catch it. Because you've set a program for yourself and you don't want to put in the effort to do it. So that's the easiest way to do it. And if the intellect is alert, obviously it will catch the what is this? The tamasic tendencies, right? So you're expecting someone in the house. This morning it happened, but they came a little earlier than I thought. So keep the door open. It's cold outside. You know they're coming to set up the class and all that. Now why should I keep the door locked and make them wait? So you automatically will recognize that you have to do this, right? It's tamasic not to. Why make a person wait in the cold or heat for no rhyme or simply tamas? Got it?
And setting a routine, Gautamji, does it only come with knowledge, or you can?
Why would you set a routine? If you don't have knowledge, you'll set a routine. Sleep, eat, sleep, eat, then after that also eat. What routine are you going to set? If you don't have knowledge, you'll set a routine based on your desires, right? That's not going to help you. Obviously, it has to be knowledge driven. Yes, Umesh.
Yeah, Gautamji, this is a long-winded question, so please bear with me.
Okay.
In the context of this verse, it is documented that about 1,000 years since Chola dynasty, they have built these temples for Shiva, Nataraj, in all of South India. And these temples for 1,000 years have been rich, flush with money. So nobody read this, verse 6,
What?
while they are building and operating these temples for thousands of years?
No. See, what you must understand is what is the intention behind something and how it's practiced. That doesn't mean the intention is wrong. The intention for a place of worship is to remind devotees. So all religions have places of worship. Now they are not operated as they should. That is not the fault of the person who built it with the right intention. So we can't. Now there are people teaching Vedanta for selfish reasons. You can't blame Vedanta for that. There are drugs being used in the universities. You can't blame university education for that, right? So everywhere there is a good intention and there is right. It's a question of time it gets abused because of selfishness. So you're right. Lot of exploitation and all goes on, not just temples, everywhere, every religion in the world. There's exploitation, there's taking advantage of innocent devotees, there's abuse, so many things. See, I told you, I can never forget this because, this is one of my first students, when I was teaching in India before coming here. So she brought her friend. And the friend was distraught, very crying and all. So I was wondering what has happened. She said she just lost her 9-year-old or something in a car accident. Tragic. And one of the big families in that city, very well known, very wealthy. And what this lady told me shocked me. She's saying, so these fellows, they all have a network, they know who's in trouble and all. They come to her house and they tell her, if you don't do this ritual, which costs this much, there's a chance she's got a 7-year-old. He may also die. Now, what would anybody do in this situation? You tell me. So, obviously, she did it. See, even if any one of you will do it, don't blame her. Because you think, might as well take a insurance guarantee. Even though life doesn't function like that. Who knows? So they prey on your emotion of fear and anxiety, ignorance. Now this is the world. So that's why you have to educate yourself and understand what the truths are. Then you will not be exploited. So, inequity there shall be in the world, said Christ. Woe unto you if you be the cause of it. There will be inequity in this world. Make sure you don't cause it. And if you can correct it, correct it. But definitely make sure you don't cause it. So why are you singling out one place or one group of people? Or everywhere is the same thing. Company has a product, doesn't it exploit it? I read a report, one fellow, he bought a pharmaceutical company. From $100, he made it $1,500, the price of that drug. Nobody else makes it. It's like that. When you're selfish and you can, you will. This is the whole problem with this world. There's no education to make people unselfish. All the so-called knowledge universities only make you selfish, self-centered. There's no program in the world to develop selfless values except Vedanta. Why do you think it's so important? Right. Verse 7.
Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate juna karmendriyai karma yogam asaktas savishishyate Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate juna karmendriyai karma yogam asaktas savishishyate.
But he who, restraining the senses by the mind, O Arjuna, engages his organs of action in the yoga of action, karma yogam, asakta, without attachment, he excels. So, what he's talking about here, very, very subtle, very important verse, is how do you act in a way that doesn't bind you, that doesn't get you more entangled in the world. So what are people doing? Most people just follow their desires, right? They follow their desires, and what is the result of that? Their selfish desires you just follow. I want more money, and you go out in the world to earn more money. What happens? So you're mentally indulging in that object. What happens? You want more. You develop stronger desires. That force never leaves you. No amount of money satisfies anybody. You see what the richest people in the world are doing. They're just craving for more wealth, nothing else. Competing with each other, who has a bigger yacht, now who has a bigger spaceship, who has a bigger this, who has a bigger that. God knows what is the insatiable hunger. Most powerful person, just more power. They want to destroy another country, then another country. It's insatiable. And the other extreme he talked about in the previous verse. You try and stay away from the world, but your mind will still go to the world. Again, you will increase your desires. So whether it is indulgence or suppression, philosophically you're gone. So it almost seems hopeless. So what does he say here? What is the solution given by the Gita? He says, you must engage your organs of action in the yoga of action without attachment. Then you will excel. So in other words, you must act. If you don't act, you'll be frustrated, suppressed. But try and act without this selfish attachment. As much as you can. You can't do it fully. So let's say you have desires. You want a better house, you want a better car, you want a better vacation. That's why you're working. But so you can't stay away from that. You want those things, but gain the knowledge and at least start acting for the benefit of others, not just yourself. If you do that, you will grow spiritually, you will be peaceful, and you will have enough capacity to fulfill your desires. There's nothing wrong with fulfilling your desire. But you must also work without attachment. That's what he's saying. Because you can't give up the whole thing. It's not possible. It's not practical then. That's what Krishna is telling Arjuna. Okay, you'll get back your kingdom. You'll get back your family. But you must act for the sake of the country. That should be your primary intention. So very easy for all of you. Most of you work for organizations or corporations, or you have your business. Work for the company. Work for your employees' sake. Let everybody benefit from my action. Incidentally, you will get, I told you how many people have got bonuses unexpectedly. Our students, promotions, because they're recognized as those who are working genuinely. Try and put this little bit into practice. Number one. So, work as unselfishly as possible. This is what it means without attachment. Number two. Now, this is the difficult part. Even if you are trying to fulfill some desires which you can't stay away from because they are so strong, you must go through it with a view to coming out of it. See, a typical example is for a youngster, they want companionship, right? Why young? Even older, anybody. You can't stay without a partner. It's a strong desire. It's understandable. But instead of just getting a partnership or a marriage to indulge, you must look at it as, okay, at this time I have this requirement, but ultimately I want to overcome it. I don't want to be dependent. So even while you're going through an action, your thoughts are actually on the higher. Now, this is very difficult to practice. And it's only meant for those very few desires which you really can't handle through knowledge. Most desires will go through knowledge. So don't worry. But certain desires, see, like I've spoken to some couples, they had to get married, but they were okay. After a little knowledge, they overcame their desire for children. Some people couldn't. So I said, okay, we have a child, and they're working on overcoming that attachment, but they needed to have a child. So one or two very strong desires like that, Vedanta says it's okay, go through it. There's no taboo. But your goal should be to ultimately come out of it. It should not be just going on indulging in that same thought all the time. My wife, my husband, my child. So, number one, as unselfish as possible. Two, certain desires which are so strong that you can't get over through knowledge alone, go through it. But with a view to ultimately coming out of it. So all of you stay with your life in your world, but ultimately the thought inside should be, one day I should rise above this dependence on the world. Then it's absolutely fine. All desires will be overcome through knowledge. There's no question about it. Knowledge of the higher removes the lower. This is the principle. But certain desires you can go through with the intellect. You engage your organ of action without attachment. Fascinating. You see how deep this is. So many of you have said, I want to go to the academy and all in a moment of inspiration. So you've explained to them, your nature is to be in the world. You're a businessman. You have to do business. That's been your nature for 40 years. But do your business for a higher purpose. That's how you'll come out of it. You'll overcome that desire for wealth. But you can't leave it. Genuinely, you must say, I want to come out of it. So fascinating how practical Vedanta is. Vedanta never says leave what you're doing, but keep gaining the knowledge and remain committed to overcoming your weakness. But that's not what we do. You just go on indulging mentally. You go on acting on your impulses and desires, and you get more and more entangled in the world. Everybody. No exceptions. Like Hamlet, in Hamlet, Claudius, who's Hamlet's uncle, murdered his father, Hamlet's father, and married his mother. And that's what Hamlet couldn't take. That was the tragedy of Hamlet. And that Claudius is praying. Imagine a fellow like that praying to God. And Claudius says, my words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go. So your words and your learning may be going towards the self, but actually where is your thought? It's fully stuck in the world. My money, my family, my name, my fame, my status, that's all. The thought has to go. I must reach the self. Yes, Sanjay.
Hariam, Gautamji. Gautamji, this might just be semantics, but why does he use the word mind here, restraining the senses by the mind, as opposed to restraining the senses by the intellect?
No, the mind is what follows the senses, right? Now the mind has to go towards the self. That's what he means. Of course, it is directed by the intellect. It's understood. Okay. So what he's trying to say is the senses, the mind should not follow the senses. The mind should follow the direction set by the intellect.
Thank you, Gautam.
Yeah. Same. 8.
Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jyayo hya karmanaha sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhyeda karmanaha Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jyayo hya karmanaha sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhyeda karmanaha.
Perform your obligatory action. For action is superior to inaction. Niyatam kuru karmatvam. Even the maintenance of your body will not be possible by inaction. So, first thing he says, action is superior to inaction. He said that before also. You have to act. Even your body, you can't maintain without action. Do you realize how much we act to maintain just our body? First of all, you have to eat. Then you have to prepare the food. Then you drink water. Then you have to brush. Then you have to bathe. Then you have to shave. Then you have to shampoo. At least that I'm free from. Then you have to do this. I mean, it's endless. Floss, tongue cleaner. I mean, all nail cutter. On and on you can go. Some of you hair color. What all you have to do? So you have to do it. If you don't, like I went to the dentist's office, the board was there. You don't really have to brush your teeth. I was only the ones you want to keep. So in small writing, I said, my God, she's got new technology. I don't have to brush my teeth. I'm signing up. You have to. They fall off. So you can only choose what is the type of action you do. So what is the type of action? Niyatam kuru karmatvam. You have to do your obligatory action. This is the basis for dharma. For the Indian culture is duty versus rights. Now it's all rights, rights and rights. That is why everything is falling apart. Countries are falling apart, communities, families also. Because every family, each member of the family says, what are you supposed to do for me? Earlier it was, what am I supposed to do? What do I ought to do as a husband? What do I ought to do as a child, as a parent? That is called niyatam karma in Sanskrit. Niyatam means obligatory action. So those actions which you ought to do in a spirit of service and sacrifice versus those actions which you like to do or don't like to do. Every conversation is, I like this, I don't like this. I like this type of food, I don't like that type of food. I like this type of weather, I don't like that type of weather. I like this type of house, I don't like that type of house. I like this type of table, I don't like that type of. Right? I like, don't like, don't like, don't like. That's our life. What ought to be done, regardless of whether there's you or your likes or dislikes. Then you'll get somewhere. And obligatory action is made up of two types. So niyatam karma is made up of nitya karma, which is your regular routine obligatory duties. Remember that. Let's say every morning you get up. That's your regular routine obligation. This ought to be done for my spiritual evolution. Exercise ought to be done. Healthy eating habits. These are your regular routine obligations. Then there are special occasional duties. It's called naimittika karma. Nitya karma is regular routine duties. Naimittika karma is special occasional duties. We have that also. Every morning you get up, but one morning your neighbor calls and says, I need to be taken to the hospital. You can't say, I'm studying, don't disturb me. It's a special occasional duty. So you have to do both. You can't get fanatic about your regular routine duties. You have to make exceptions for special occasional circumstances. So if you are not doing these two, the opposite of niyatam karma is called kamya karma, which is actions done just to fulfill your desires. And the worst type of action is nishiddha karma, which are prohibited actions, which are not only selfish, but in which you destroy others for the sake of your selfishness. This is the lowest. Even if you're not destroying others, you're a good goody person, but you're working just for yourself and your family. That also is bad enough. You've got to rise above that. So prohibited action. which is criminal action, immoral action. Then there is desire-ridden action, which you don't harm others, but you're selfish. You only work for yourself. Then there is the highest, niyatam karma, obligatory action. What do I ought to do in this world? Okay, we'll quickly take up questions before we end. Francia, go ahead.
I was just wondering, Gautamji, that sometimes the obligatory action or the higher action becomes a likable action. Like, for example, I look forward to having these meetings. So maybe at first I was like, I shouldn't, but after some time, I enjoy this. So the obligatory action of the routine becomes pleasant.
Yes, of course. In fact, there is no more satisfying feeling than doing what ought to be done. But what it means is that is not the reason why you do it. You do it because you ought to do it. It could be what you like also. Nobody is saying no. But the reason to do it is not just because you like it. It's because the intellect understands it ought to be done. That's the propelling factor. And you're right. After you overcome the initial hurdle, it could be something you dislike, like exercise. But then once you get into it, you enjoy it. Shreyas?
Hariom Gautamji, a very quick mundane question related to duty. Those of us who come here to study and continue to live here while our parents are back in India, you've probably heard this question many times. Are we giving up on our duty in terms of taking care of our parents? I'm not saying we don't care for them and we couldn't care, but just that act of coming here and them staying in India.
See, that's totally a subjective decision depending upon their requirements, your ability to move, etc. So you have to do what your conscience bids you do. You have definitely an obligation to take care of them, but to what extent you can do it? Sometimes they may want you to be there. Stay as far away from us as possible. I know, and sometimes it is necessary. There are people who move back because they need to be around. So it's purely what you have to analyze with your intellect. What is the right decision for your family, for them, and your obligations, taking into account what they require. This is a dilemma for many people. So you have to do the best you can. You can't disregard that obligation, that's for sure. But how you fulfill it, that there are people who've got their parents here. There's one person I know, both his parents have come and they live here with him. He's beautifully taking care of them, this family. There are others who've gone back. There are others who stay here and they stay there. And they have enough help and support that they don't need them around. So it depends on your individual situation. There's no black and white answer for that.
Thank you.
Ganesh?
My question is, like you said, there are some nitya karma things, and again, from a traditional family, like Sandhya Vandanam is kind of considered as a nitya karma. Like, do you do some of these actions without understanding them, or is there?
Again, it is purely subjective what you feel you ought to do. Now, suppose there's a tradition in your family at 2 o'clock. I'm just giving an example. You're supposed to do this ritual, and your boss has called you for a meeting. You're going to tell him, no, I have to do this ritual. It's not practical, right? So it depends upon your individual situation and what you feel you ought to do at that time. So make a decision based on your intellect. So it's not the outward performance of a ritual which matters. It's the inner feeling. As long as you have an inner feeling, you can change it around. Because it's the inner feeling which matters. See, for example, simple example is my guru. We have a tradition, we fast on Friday nights, in the academy. 1 meal a week, we just skip. just to give the system a rest. And he follows that in Mumbai also. So once he went there and somebody called him that night. They were leaving for town, for abroad the next day or something, and they really wanted to meet him for a meal. He accepted, even if it was a Friday night. No, I don't eat on Friday night. It was a special occasional duty, right, to that person. So it's all subjective. You're not violating your principles. You're making an exception based on the circumstance. So you have to be true to yourself, as I was explaining to Shreyas earlier. Got it? So any questions, we can take it up on Wednesday. Otherwise, we'll see you next weekend. Hari Om.